However, it's Australia and 3 laps of the City Beach course, 28.2k in total. A bit more climbing this time, 250 metres, and it's Le Champs-Élysées at 1.9 watts per kilo in the group. It's almost like you're just letting the world champion from 2023 and Hayden Pucker, who we know is on outstanding form. He's heading the league table at the moment on the Echelon Racing League. Ride away. Well, I'll tell you something, Zach Nair is working, but he's not working for anybody in the group. He's working for Hayden Pucker, who's down the road, because the second someone puts in an attack like Bird, Nair responds. He closes the gap down, he gets on the front, and he sits up straight away. Classic teamwork tactics being played out here, but not teamwork to close the gap, teamwork to keep the gap. Pucker is clear for his run in to the finish today. He has broken away. He's now got 40 seconds on that chase group, and that was him going underneath the banner and taking the win.
Bird gets to the front. Hurd going all in on his effort. Bruce Bird about to break that trainer underneath him as he puts in everything he's got into the finish, and Bruce Bird going to hold on for second place today. This is really getting in, Emma, to a prime time of your virtual racing season. If you're a rider who's targeting that Stars and Stripes for the Americans or Canadians, these are some of the most important weeks of your season right here. I would say it's a departure from the racing that we've seen for a lot of riders in this group. It's been very rare that we see a group riding together for this long. Typically, it's only a couple minutes before somebody will decide that they want to break the rhythm here. But this group looking pretty happy, pretty comfortable right now. And to me, that just means we're in for an even more exciting finale here once they start lifting that tempo. There's going to be a lot of fresh legs that go at it into the closing kilometers.
Well, Snova's absolutely kicking it here because she's only got 500 metres to go. So Snova goes long. Van Hooling's on her wheel. So is Colombian, Hermansen, Tiffany Penner, Aitken and Gallegos are out of this now. Unless there's something absolutely phenomenal they can do, because Alexi Snova is dialing it on the front here. Can she hold this? Can Van Hooling come? Van Hooling's just kicked at 10 watts per kilo. Can Liz Van Hooling make this a win today? It's going to be her first in the Echelon Racing League if she can. But she's coming up onto Snova's wheel. That's the banner. Can she do it, or is Snova going to come over the line first? Van Hooling and Snova are neck and neck. It's going to be Snova, it's going to be Van Hooling, it's going to be Van Hooling.
Here's your women's category B sprint into the finish here. Tuma versus Bowman's going to go head to head. Tuma will be first to open it up from position number 1. Bowman's trying to use that draft in the second spot. Here she comes, making the move. Bowman's and Tuma going to go to the line together. That'll be a photo finish, and I think we're going to have to wait for confirmation here. But it looks like they're going to give it to Tuma on the line. Well, turned into an exciting finish on the line. Look at that, 0.115 seconds between Snover and Van Hooling. Another close finish in the Echelon Racing League, as we look forward to our finale of the league next week, and then obviously the national championships coming up after that. But this finale, maybe one of the best races of the year coming up here, especially in this elite women's field. I think that's going to be the best one to watch, the elite. And the finale is here after 5 weeks of racing, from Alcatraz to Alula to Australia. We're in cycling's hallowed ground of Ghent, Belgium today for the Echelon Racing League Championships. Brad Soner with you as always, alongside Emma Martin, as we get ready for another great week of racing. And Emma, every week seems to get better here in the ERL, so we are super excited to see how this one ends up in the championships today.
Oh, I don't disagree with you, Brad, at all. And where would you want the championships to go, other than to the absolute racing classics of Belgium? And that's where we're going today. But let's just check where we ended up after stage 5 in those overall top 10 standings. Hayden Pucker, 960 points, topped the league. Thomas Thrall gave him a run for his money, but never quite made it to Pucker's domination. Zach Nair climbed his way into 3rd place and stayed there by 5 points. Ricardo Panizza rode really, really strongly and nearly really took that final spot on the podium. Bruce Bird, Alex Marr, Carlos Ospina, Bjorn Andreasen, John Brune and Neil Fryatt rounded out the top 10.
Without a doubt, Hayden Pucker has been the man to beat week in and week out in our elite races. But this week, Rodder's going to have a chance, a little change in the parcours this week. We're going to see two major climbs on this course, and we really haven't seen anything like this in the ERL yet.
No, we haven't, and we will get there very shortly. But the list of riders on the start sheets. Now, let's just remember, this is the championship race. The top 50 riders overall in the league qualifying for this race today. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many of them take the start line.
Well, you saw that list of top 10 names in the standings. Really, any of those guys on any given day have a shot at winning against a rider like Hayden Pucker. It really comes down to the course and how the riders race the course. That's going to be the big question. Do they race defensively, or do they go on the offensive early on and maybe try and get a gap before that first climb?
Well, 3 laps today in Belgium, in Ghent. Each lap 12.5 kilometres in length. 2 climbs. The Koppenberg is the first climb today, 1.2 kilometres in length, average gradient 5.6. But let me tell you, it's seriously, seriously steep out there. It tops 11% in places. They come down, they head up the Eichenberg Hill, 1.4 kilometres, average gradient 4.6%. These two are going to be instrumental because they don't just do them once, they do them 3 times. 3 laps of the Ghent course to give that total race distance of 37.5 kilometres with 411 metres of climbing.
Group rolling out from the start line here as they get underway. This one is always a tough start here on my whoosh. You'll see these guys very easily get up into 7-8 watts per kilo early on here. Going to be the same story as they get underway. You see a lot of yellow and red on the right-hand side of the screen. Emma, as we kind of go through the list of names here, I'm wondering if any names stand out on this list as exceptional climbers today. You know, every one of these riders has a shot to beat a guy like Hayden Pucker, but is there anyone that you kind of see scrolling through here that you've keyed in on as a standout climber on a day like today?
Well, I'll tell you who I've seen in the pack, and forgive me if I'm mistaken, but I think the rainbow stripes are in that pack today, Brad. I think Jason Osborne is on the start line, and I think that rainbow jersey is slap bang in the middle of that men's peloton today.
That would certainly be one to watch. Answers my question right there. Well, we'll see if the separation comes here, as there will be an initial separation. I'm actually a little surprised that this group has stayed together for this long. We're only a minute in, but typically there's at least one rider in here that would be lifting this tempo up into zone 6. Here goes someone. They're watching the live stream. Hearing me, it's Bruce Bird. Classic move here from the Canadian, jumping off the front, getting things started, keeping it interesting. That's what I love about watching Bruce Bird race. This guy's here to have fun. He's here to make it fun and always makes it interesting. Good on you, Bruce.
Uh, yeah, and I agree with you, Brad. You know, he has been one of the riders of the Echelon Racing series for me. Constantly aggressive. You know, fortune favours a brave rider, and he had a fabulous race in the final round. He worked and he worked and he worked in every single round, and in that final round on City Beach, he was rewarded with 2nd place in that race. And you know, he really deserved it. It's been great to watch his attitude and his determination week in, week out. Now, other riders to watch out for today: Hayden Pucker. This is his type of course. They're short, they're punchy climbs. They are not, and I'm going to say this with a caveat, not necessarily or normally the types of climbs that suit Jason Osborne, the world champion. But he wouldn't be here if he didn't think he was going to be competitive. And you can never discount him on any type of course. Thomas Thrall, I think, will go well today. Short, sharp, punchy climbs really suit a sprinter. There's that balance between, I think, on my whoosh, the sprinters and the climbers when it comes to these types of climbs. And if you're a really punchy, sprint-based rider, these climbs really suit you.
Jason Osborne giving Bruce Bird maybe the greatest compliment of all, deciding he's just going to sit right on his wheel and kind of identifying him as a good wheel to follow here early on after seeing that first attack launching off the front here. But things calming back down now. This is going to be really interesting because they're going to wait until they hit the bottom of this climb, I think, before anybody ratchets it up. So this will be just a straight up cage match on the Koppenberg coming up here.
Well, it will do indeed. And the Koppenberg, let's not forget, in real life, it kicks to over 11%. And you can see it already coming up. There are some very steep sections on here. Now, used in the Tour of Flanders regularly for many, many years, from 1976 through to 1987, every single year, was put back into the race in 2002. And the women's race, Tour of Flanders, it was introduced in 2022 there. The pro peloton out on the Belgium Classics are regulars up the Koppenberg. Likewise, those who race the Koppenberg cyclocross. And you know, Brad, the Koppenberg cyclocross only goes up the entirety of the Koppenberg once because it's deemed too hard. They actually then take the riders just up a section of it.
Too hard? Never heard of it. Our Echelon Racing League would never say such a thing. We don't mind a little effort out there on the road. They're going up and over the full one this time as you get a look at Neil Fryatt here getting ready. They are on to the bottom slopes of the Koppenberg here, so look for some explosive efforts coming off the front here. Now you see all the heads start to bob side to side. Everybody going to go into pretty much full-on Zone 6. This is as deep as you can go, as hard as you can until you get to the top of this climb. There's not a whole lot of strategy to it here, Emma.
It's just so steep. 15% at the moment under the wheels of the riders. Turek is in the mix, so is Walton, Andres and Mark. Carr is here as well as Panizza. Panizza pushing some epic power there, trying to close down Brian Duffy, because it's Brian Duffy who is on the front of the pack. I think there's probably a key plan here from some of the riders today about how they take the win in the Echelon Racing Championships today. And Brian Duffy, in those stars and stripes, targeting, I imagine, those national championships very, very shortly, is one of the ones at the head of the race.
Duffy, the world champ right behind him. Jason Osborne is there. There's Hayden Pucker. All the heavy hitters reporting to the front of this group right now. This is just moments away from forcing a selection. You can already see guys starting to fall off the back, but this is going to form a group of about 10 guys right here. You can just see that little separation is now the world champ attacking about halfway up the climb here, just on his way up and over the top here. Jason Osborne putting in a big dig to open a little time over the rest.
Well, he wants to make sure that jersey gets its airtime today. Bradney's doing it well, but Pucker closing down onto the wheel. Nair is there as well as Thrall. Duffy and Andreasen now just 1 second back, and it's Hayden Pucker who's gone over the top of the climb and continued to push. Now, we've talked about momentum on the downhills being absolutely crucial, and here, with the two climbs in succession, the momentum you can get on this downhill and carry into the climb, the second climb, the Eichenberg Hill, is going to be really, really crucial.
I see the way Pucker staying on the effort on the way down here. This is a surprisingly compact race that first time up and over. There are, I'm going to say about 8, maybe 10 guys here that will all be able to get back into this group. But you see the next one comes pretty quickly. It goes back up. So that is really your first selection being made right here. Duffy made it. Fryatt made it. Daniel Turek is in there. Bjorn Andreasen, the former world champion. Zach Nair also made the split. And then I think Jean-Michel Lachance is going to be the first rider with a little gap back to him. So after the first time up and over the Koppenberg, that is your front group. And it's a group of heavy hitters, that's for sure.
Oh, it is indeed. And the question for me is, will this group stay together on the Eichenberg Hill? And then the second question for me is, can they stay together on the flatlands? Because it is pretty much pan flat before we come around to do these two climbs again. So Jean-Michel Lachance, we saw him riding really strongly last week. Himself and Riccardo Panizza, the two riders riding together here, they are 8 seconds back from the leading group. Carlos Ospina, another one of the strong riders, coming onto the back of Panizza as well. That's going to be quite a strong group of 3 riders. It's going to be interesting to see how they play the rest of this course.
Well, the problem for that group of 3 is they've got a super strong group of 8 up the road who are all going to be pushing each other. Pretty much every big engine in this race made that front selection. So Panizza fighting a very tough battle here with his chase companions. But if anyone can do it, it'll be these guys. Nothing surprises me anymore in the ERL. So we're going to keep our eye on Riccardo Panizza, Jean-Michel Lachance, and looks like Carlos Ospina a little further back trying to join these guys. But Panizza certainly not for a lack of effort. He's going to keep trying to get up there. He's still got him in sight on his gameplay screen here. So that makes it just a little bit easier to chase something when you can see it. And the good news for him is that he's going to keep them in sight to the bottom of the next climb.
Jason Osborne, the world champion, has absolutely decided he's taken this race by the scruff of the neck because he's come to the front at the Eichenberg climb as well as leading it out on the Koppenberg. Hayden Pucker responding, Zach Nair, Thrall, Turek, Duffy and Andreessen. In fact, Andreessen is the rider at the back of the group. Now, the Eichenberg climb, Brad, used 40 times in the Tour of Flanders. A real classic climb. A classic name as well, because Eichenberg Hill, well, it stands for Oak Hill.
You see some nice oak trees rendered along the course here. Very well done by the production crew. Little split happening in this group. Looks like Osborne took one off the front here. You see Zach Nair suffering to try to make up that gap. So Osborne and Pucker, arguably the two odds-on favorites coming into this race. No surprise to see them gapping these guys about halfway up the Eichenberg. This one dragging on a little bit longer than the Koppenberg on climb one here. And that's causing a major split in this front group. This is going to be an awesome battle between Osborne and Pucker, the world champ and the ERL leader, going head-to-head at the front of the elites.
This could be a really exciting race, Brad, because Osborne and Pucker could well now work together and clear the gap between themselves and the chase group of six. It's currently lying at around 7 or 8 seconds. But these two riders, the question is, do they want to work together? Or is Jason Osborne going to do what Jason Osborne sometimes does and just ride away from the field?
If I'm Hayden Pucker, I'm just sitting right on that train. I'd be more than happy to catch the Jason Osborne 10 o'clock express here rolling out of this group. So, yeah, wouldn't be surprised to see these guys kind of come to a truce. There's really no reason for them to be attacking each other, riding too hard. They still got a lot of racing yet to go here. So we'll keep an eye on those two. Meanwhile, the group that they left behind, trying to figure out how they're going to play this one in the race for third, or is it a chase group trying to catch the leaders? That's the question that these guys are asking themselves right now.
Well, Bjorn Andreasen on our screen, you can see him with the headphones on. I would like to think the music is pumping and keeping him focused and motivated. He's in a great place in the group towards the back of the group, and you can see his watts on the top of the screen, 225, 221, 174, but they're green. And that tells me he's nicely in the draft. If those watt numbers are white, the rider is out of the draft. If they're green, they're in the draft. And it is about energy conservation outside of those two climbs on this course. So being tucked into the group, being able to have that draft abling, it really does help in terms of recovery and the speed of recovery. It's exactly where you want to be if you want to recover and then attack again.
That's exactly what Bjorn Andreasen is going to do here, attacking from the back of the group after sitting on that nice draft. Uses a little slingshot, goes right by these guys and lifts the tempo. Everyone else being forced to respond here. Andreasen realized here that what they were doing wasn't going to get the job done to catch the leaders, right? If they want a chance at catching Osborne and Pucker, he's realizing that this kind of sitting around watching each other isn't going to cut it. And so I think Andreasen just trying to light a fire under these guys, saying, hey, we can still do this. We can still catch these guys. It's 17 seconds up the road right now for Osborne and Pucker, but a group of 4 or 5 riders, if they work together, still have a shot at bringing back that gap.
Well, they do, and it is that question, isn't it, Brad, if they work together? Because at the moment, Pucker and Osborne are doing a brilliant job as a 2-up time trial on the front. The question is, are they committed to pretty much nearly a 30-kilometre 2-up time trial to stay away? And at what point will they start battling for the win? All of those things will influence, won't they, what happens behind?
It's going to be an interesting and a long day of racing for these two today, watching Osborne and Pucker on the right-hand side of your screen here. I'm going to guess that these guys probably just stay locked onto each other all day. There's really no reason to try and, turn this into a long-range attack. If you think you can beat the other rider in this group, you can beat them probably in a long-range attack or a sprint either way. So you might as well ride together here. Just make sure you stay away and deal with it at the end of the race. That's my guess, but that's easy to say here from the commentary booth with a headset on instead of looking like these 3 guys on your screen right now suffering on the rider cams.
Well, I'm loving that the first prediction has gone down at the 8.6 kilometre marker, Brad, as we drop in with Bruce Bird, Jonas Walton and David Weinstein. You can see them on the screen and you can see the amount of effort and work being done by those riders in their pain case. Bruce Bird at the moment is on the front of what I'm going to call the second chase group because they're 24 seconds behind the main chase group of 6. Walton, Bird, Lachance are all in this group, and Bruce Bird taking a look around the front. Now, I'm just taking a look at who's in the group ahead, and Turek and Fryatt are in there as well. So that really is a class chase group. This group chasing hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 riders in chase group 2, and they've got a 26-second gap to close down. Now, I'm going to make a prediction, and my prediction is that group is probably working better than Group 2 on the road and possibly will be the group to make the catch.
There's no question in chase group number 2 what the mission is, right? Nobody's worried about racing for 11th place on the road. These guys have to worry about, well, do I try and hold on for third here? There is some money on the line today. Third place pays, so that comes into the equation here as well. And I'm just not seeing the urgency from this second group right now. I'm just not seeing these guys riding in a way that looks like they're trying to chase 1 and 2. I'm seeing guys riding for third place right here, except for Bjorn Andresen, the only guy who's launched multiple attacks out of this group. He's the one guy that gets a pass here, as he's going to once again try and go here. Well, they say fortune favors the bold. This is about as bold as it gets, trying to go across a 25-second gap to Hayden Pucker and Jason Osborne. Good luck, Bjorn.
Well, he has been really instrumental in making this, I'm going to call the second break of the day. If we remember back to the Golden Gate Bridge in round 1, Pucker went. And then after a period of time, Andreasen went. And he didn't actually close the gap down to Pucker, but what he did was he secured himself second position that day because of the gap he'd put in. Now, is he doing it again? Is the plan, okay, it's a 26-second gap to Pucker and Osborne. I may not be able to close it, but what I could do, because I've noticed this group are all messing around and taking a look at each other, I could well go clear of this group because they're too busy worrying about each other.
I think part of that is also looking at the names in this group. Zach Nair, Thomas Thrall. I don't want to sprint against those guys in a finale. So your best chance of beating those guys is going to be getting as far away from them as you can, because those are some of the best closers in the game if this group stays together. So I think he's probably taken inventory of this group as well. And Andreasen, a very tactical rider, also very strong, realizing that this is a card to play right here. That's going to be his best chance of staying away. Let's say he's got a 1 in 5 shot of making this move work. Well, it's about a 1 in 100 shot of sprinting against names like Tom Thrall, Zach Nair, Bruce Bird. So I think if you're an odds person and you're looking at the numbers, this is the right move here for Andreasen.
Yes, I agree, Brad. And one of the things I'm also taking a bit of a look at is Dan Turek. We've just had him on our screen, and Thomas Thrall, making sure they stay towards the back of the group and really trying to take as much recovery as possible whilst in the group and forcing other people to do the chasing. Well, interestingly, Fryatt is the one that has decided that Andreasen has gone too far. And then as soon as Fryatt went, Thrall decided it was time to close the gap down, and Tom Thrall, we've just seen him up and out of the saddle in his pain cave, pushing on, looking at those screens, those fans trying to keep him cool as he closes that gap down to Andreasen. Andreasen now only at 2 seconds. Fryatt, Nair, Turek are the riders we are looking at. Thrall is in there as well, and they are desperately now trying to reel back Andreasen. But they are also, I'm noticing, trying not to do too much work either.
A lot of looking around in this group. It looks like Fryatt is going to go again and kind of crack the whip against these guys here as Andreasen gets knocked down to 3 seconds in front of these guys. I'm surprised that Andreasen hasn't gone further out. Typically, when we see a move like that, he can usually open like 8 or 10 seconds pretty quickly here. He's doing everything he can, but the problem is Daniel Turek is behind him doing 10 watts per kilo to try and counter this move. So Andreasen certainly got the alarm bells ringing in this group and making things interesting for us here in the chase group.
Yeah, he is. And do you know, he's tapping out a great rhythm. He's on the flatlands at the moment, and our viewers can see that on the top right hand corner of your screen, the gradient pan flat. Andreasen on the bottom left hand corner of your screen, you can see the speed that he's moving at 45 kilometers an hour solo on the flat. And now, if the group were working behind together, they would have been able to lift that pace and close the gap down. But the issue is that there's the attacks and the pushes and the drive comes from the group and then it backs off and then somebody's got to pick it up again because they're never quite on that rear wheel of Andreessen.
Best case for Andreessen here is he gets one or two guys with him that go up and just join him to help out. He doesn't want to bring the whole group with him, which is what's happening right here. But I think his ideal scenario would have been that Neil Fryatt went with him. Neil has been the other guy who's really been sort of itching to split this group up. He has been the first responder to every one of Andreessen's moves. So I think he was hoping for Neil Fryatt to get there a little bit earlier so that they could work together. There's no way that Andreessen wanted to stay away solo for the rest of this race. I think at this point, this early on, he still needed someone with him. That was going to be Neil Fryatt, but the problem is Fryatt has dragged the entire group up with him.
Well, I wonder whether there are a few team tactics going on here in the group with Andreasen going down and making sure somebody chases whilst the rest of the team take a break. While Fryatt, Nair, Andreasen, Thrall, Turek are all in the group. This is the chase group we're watching at the moment. They are 43, I'm going to say that again, 43 seconds back on Pucker and Osborne, the two leaders in the race at the moment. The chase group behind these are at around 28 seconds still. So the gap back to group 3 has not gone out any further than the last time we were with them.
It's pretty impressive, all things considered, especially with the way that that front group was responding to Bjorn Andreessen's attack. As now we see Daniel Turek going over the top of that one and countering that move. Now, Turek was putting in some big numbers earlier. I was noticing some massive watt per kilo readings for him. So he is very clearly willing to burn some matches on this effort. Now, Turek going away solo, no one with him and no response. Look at the numbers back in the main group, 2-3 watts per kilo. That's easy riding for these guys as Turek is up at the front doing 5 or 6 watts per kilo. So he's going to go out to 6 seconds here pretty quickly, but now he finds himself in the exact same position that Bjorn Andreessen just did, as now he's got to fight with whether or not he's going to be able to do this solo for the rest of this race.
Well, the only different thing with Turek at the moment is the fact the Koppenberg is coming, and it was indeed on the top of his screen. These group, well, they've got a little bit longer to wait. They're at the 13.3 kilometre marker, so they are clear of lap 1. Each lap 12.5 kilometres today. So this group we are in with, and it's a big group. They are 1 minute 23 down on chase group 3, but the riders seeming to be rolling strongly now through lap 1 and well and truly into lap 2.
Nice. This is going to be another fun group to watch. They'll have a bunch of riders to ride with, making that interesting in sort of the top 20 group back there with Mason Roca leading the way. Meanwhile, checking back in with our two leaders up the front of the race, Jason Osborne and Hayden Pucker hitting the Koppenberg one more time, and Osborne going to lead them from the bottom.
Oh, they are indeed. And Osborne and Pucker wheel to wheel on the second ascent of the Koppenberg today. It is so short and it is so sharp. And luckily, those are not cobbles. Well, they are cobbles in real life, but it's a flat road for our riders at the moment because Osborne and Pucker neck and neck. The power coming out of these two at the moment. Hayden Pucker currently 600 watts. He is producing on this climb to stay on the wheel of the world champion.
Mark my words, it's only a matter of time before the technology catches up and they will have to battle with those cobbles at home. It's coming. It's being developed in some lab somewhere right now, I'm sure, and it's only a matter of time before we see that in real life. Meanwhile, back with Daniel Turek, who has been doing huge numbers all day, has now opened 18 seconds over the guys behind him. I think that's going to be maybe I was going to say inflated because of the climb, but that's a pretty good looking gap back to that group. So this is a massive effort from Daniel Turek today. You see him bottom left corner of your screen, jersey open. This guy is suffering. This is a massive effort and it hurts right now, Emma.
Oh, it does indeed, but it's doing the business. 14 seconds back to this chase group at the moment. That's a great gap because he's going to go over the top of the Koppenberg and extend that gap into the Eichenberg. But Freyr leading the charge with Thrall, Andreasen. Three riders leading the charge behind Turek. And I say just three because Zach Nair now in trouble. Zach Nair going off the back of this chase group. Jonas Walton only 12 seconds back. That is not far off the wheel of Zach Nair. Walton could do a great job here in terms of closing Nair down.
It only takes a little gap that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The fact that Zach Nair was not able to stay with this group tells you a lot about the strength of the guys that were riding and attacking out of that group. So Bjorn Andreasen here back up and over the top. Another big effort from Andreasen, but still 7 seconds behind Turek here. They did take a nice chunk out on this climb, but look how it has broken this group up. Remember, at one point, this was 8 riders all together, but this one falling apart at the seams up and over the Koppenberg.
Yeah, so we've currently got 2 leaders out front, Pucker and Osborne. We've got Turek in 3rd place, Lone Rider 11 seconds up the road, and then a chase group of 3. All change after the Koppenberg this time round on lap 2, Brad.
Well, and they'll be back on that Eichenberg very soon here. So we'll see if this group of 3 survive up and over as Andreasen, Fryatt, and Thrall all linking up here to try to hunt down Daniel Turek. 10 seconds up the road as what is now a chase group of Zach Nair and Jonas Walton, as predicted, have come together to try to work together and get their group back up to these guys on the right-hand side of your screen. Again, same thing with these 2 here, Emma. We've seen this a lot in the Echelon Racing League. The guys on the left can only do so much work. It's really up to the guys on the right and how intensely they race against each other that's going to determine if Zach Nair and Jonas Walton even have a shot at making their way up.
Oh, completely. And that 18-second gap could well close quite quickly. I mean, take a look at this. Turek's currently just rolling at the moment on the descent into the Eichenberg climb. Thrall, Fryatt, there's a little bit of a pace, but they really are on that recovery phase, and it really is. Look at Andreasen's heart rate dropping to sub 110. He's utilised that downhill for recovery because he knows what's coming is with Thrall and Fryatt.
You know, the more I think about this, I got to be honest, this is probably the right call for these guys, talking about what you do about Daniel Turek up the road. The fact that he's been away for that long and it's only 10 seconds, that's a very manageable gap for a group like these 3 guys, right? If they all work together and they, into the closing kilometers start to target Turek, 10 seconds is absolutely doable. So I don't think there's a ton of worry yet because that gap just hasn't gone out the way that I think Daniel Turek was hoping that it would. And so these guys back here, Thrall, Fryatt, and Andreasen, not worried yet. If that goes up to 15 or 20 seconds, that gets into dangerous territory because that's harder to time that you'll be able to bring it back before the finish. But 10 seconds, you should be able to bring that back within 2 or 3 minutes if you work together.
And they've still got him in sights. Take a look up the road. You can see Turek from Neil Fryatt's position. And so they can see him, and that is going to be of benefit, and that is going to be quite a comfortable position. 10 seconds, we can still see the rider ahead. If we actually push on here, we can bring him down. And Thrall is putting in a good strong pace here on the climb. Turek is climbing well, though. He's going to go up and over the top of the climb ahead, I think, of this chase group. It's holding. It's not extending Turek's gap.
Meanwhile, Nair getting a little gap over Walton. Remember, Walton came together with Nair on the last climb. That was where Walton kind of made his contact to Zach Nair here. So he's going to slowly but surely reel himself back up to that rear wheel. And Nair and Walton back together here. Those guys have been locked in ever since they linked up. That's a good battle to watch between those 2. Over on the left-hand side of your screen, Fryatt getting to the front here. He's going to try and open up a little bit of space. Looks like Thrall is the latest victim of this group. He goes 4 seconds off the back as Fryatt presses the tempo on the front now.
Yeah, and if I was Neil Fry, I'd want to be pushing the tempo on the front with Thomas Thrall in danger because he would be the sprint competition. We've seen Thrall and Fryatt go head to head earlier on in the Echelon Racing Series on the line. And that day, Fryatt literally pipped, and I mean pipped, half a tyre width Thomas Thrall on the line. So Fryatt taking every opportunity when it's indicating that Thrall might be in danger to push on and ride clear.
And that effort to get rid of Thrall is going to work on the other side of the group as well and get them a little closer to Turek here, who's now down to 5 seconds on the climb. Fryatt is loving this uphill section here. He's really using that to his advantage today. It's very clear that he's good and enjoys these climbs. Well, I don't know about enjoys, but certainly looks like he's enjoying them because he's been able to do some pretty incredible things on the way up. So Fryatt is using this course to its full advantage today. And Daniel Turek is just trying to hold on with his solo move up the road here. I'm looking at Turk's stats here. Heart rate 170. His cadence is looking good. All things considered, he's in a pretty calm zone. I mean, I'm not really seeing the signs of a rider that's struggling or about to blow up, anything like that.
Oh, and he's going to come off the top of the Eichenberg, drop down onto the descent, and then he's got a significant period of flat. Now, the challenge being is on his own, he's got no draft, so he has to make that pace on the flat, and he has to continue it, and the only person doing the work is himself. Behind Fryatt and Andreasen, one at the front, one at the back, the rider at the back, a slightly easier pace, taking a bit more rest and recovery. If those two work together, they can actually get their speed higher than Turek riding on his own. Turek may choose, because it's now a 6 second gap, to actually sit up and wait for them. And I'm just looking at his watts per kilo. He's backed right off. Now, that might be because he's quite comfortable on the descent, but there is a strategic decision now for Daniel Turek to make.
Meanwhile, Thrall has joined Jonas Walton and Zach Nair. That's going to make a group of three over on the right-hand side of your screen. Right move for Tom Thrall here. I don't think you want to be stuck in that gap if there's a chance to go back and get a draft and just, give up 8 or 10 seconds. But in exchange, you get the draft of Zach Nair and Jonas Walton. That's a pretty good trade-off in my book. So now Tom Thrall going to make it 3 back here in the race for 6th place as 1 and 2 ride together up the road, and then 3, 4, and 5 try to sort out 3rd place in chase 1.
Well, they are indeed. And Neil Fryatt digging deep at the moment. He's desperate to get over to the wheel of Turek before the flatlands become the next 5 kilometres. Andreasen just jumping on the back of his wheel, not going over the top, not closing the gap, getting onto Fryatt's wheel and then sitting back up again, trying to stop that catch happening. Turek at the moment continuing at a steady pace, a good strong time trial best. Fryatt going again. Look at the work and the effort. It's great to have Neil Fryatt back on the Echelon Racing Championships because he wasn't feeling well enough to partake next week. It's great to see he's obviously got over whatever it was that was bothering him.
Oh, and that's going to be it for Daniel Turek as Fryatt has successfully hunted him down and close down the gap to 3rd place. So that puts them all back together with Turek, Fryatt, and Andreasen just dangling off the back of that group right now. They'll come back together and sort of reset chase number 1 here. Meanwhile, looks like some action up at the front of the group. Hayden Pucker lifting the tempo a little bit, putting Osborne on the back foot. He'll recover no problem, but these are all little things that add up throughout the day. I mean, it looks like these guys are maybe riding together, and from our view, it's like, okay, they're calm, they're riding in this group of 2, but there's a lot of little aggressions that go on in a scenario like this where you try and take advantage of maybe places you think you can put the hurt on just a little bit more. I just saw one from Hayden Pucker back there where Osborne just let the power drop a little bit, and Pucker immediately jumped on it, forcing Osborne to write a check to cover that gap. So Hayden Pucker is not going quietly into the night against Jason Osborne today.
Well, Brad, if these two were away on the road, they'd be able to see each other. They'd be looking each other in the eye. They'd be trying to judge the level of fatigue or whether they're faking the level of fatigue. They'd be trying to work out what's going on with each other. They've got to do pretty much exactly the same here when they've got the data on the screen, not eyeballs. So, and how do they do that? A little bit of a dig, a little bit of respite, a little bit of a dig, a little bit of respite. How quickly are they responding? Are they responding? Can they match the power? Are they holding this consistency? Are they taking their turn on the front? All of those things are trying to give these two riders an indication of how the other one is feeling.
It's like baking a cake. You just got to keep probing it until that comes out clean, and then you know it's done. That's what these guys are doing, just tiny little pokes here. But eventually, you're going to have one that kind of breaks through here. So Jason Osborne riding on the front, Hayden Pucker responding. Meanwhile, big action back in the chase for third place. Bjorn Andresen going on the attack, putting Neil Fryatt into 13 watts per kilo around the corner here. These guys are at each other's throat today. You talk about back and forth with this group of three. Turek went on a massive attack. Fryatt was responsible for chasing, and Drayson attacking earlier in the day. These guys have been off the charts in the championships today. And remember, they're racing for third place with money on the line today. So this one means a lot in the ERL. It's no longer about points. These guys have a lot to gamble for today.
Well, yes, you're right, Brad, because top 5 riders take away prizes today rather than points in the Echelon Championships. And Pucker and Osborne, the 2 riders, out in front. But Turek, Fryatt and Andreasen have been digging deep, these 3 riders doing the chasing. Really interesting there. Neil Fryatt coming up onto the back wheel of Andreasen, instantly coming off of the power, though. He didn't want to go over the top. He just wanted to temper that power and put him onto Andreasen's back wheel, ensuring that these 3 riders continue to race each other. So Turek, Fryatt and Andreasen now 1 minute 47 seconds back on the leading 2, but 44 seconds clear of the chasing 3. So really now clearly establishing themselves in 3rd, 4th and 5th place.
This has created 3 clear groups on the road, and it's looking unlikely that there's going to be any more mixing between those 3 groups. I think you're probably finishing with the group that you're with at this point. So you see Zach Nair and Thomas Thrall, along with Jonas Walton in this group, just barely hanging on back there in the race for 6th, 7th, and 8th. There's Walton working his way back up. These are the kinds of signs that start to get troubling when you talked about trying to read a rider and kind of seeing where the fatigue sets in. How quickly they're able to come back from one of these small gaps is a really good tell of how a rider's feeling. Now, there is an element of gameplay to the point where you don't want to, go too quickly to close down a gap. You don't need to panic when gaps open up, but you can also see if the same rider starts letting these gaps open up over and over and over, and they're taking longer and longer to respond. That's a sure sign of fatigue. And I'm wondering if we're seeing that in Jonas Walton, or if he's just trying to ride as conservative as possible. This may also be a guy who's just trying to sit at the back, trying to get the biggest draft that he can, trying to ride the smartest race that he can, and make his move later on in the day.
Yeah, and getting into that draft, absolutely key. Pretty much you are in that draft when you close that gap to around 6 meters. And once you get over that 6 meter point in terms of that back wheel, those numbers will go green and you will close down quicker. Well, Dan Ziegler on our screen at the moment in a 2-rider group with Russell Payne here at 17th and 18th place, comfortably within that top 20, and looking like the 2 riders working really well together.
That'll be a good one. We'll keep an eye on the 2 Canadians, Dan and Russell, battling it out back here, still inside the top 20, which is a great ride today considering the strength of the field that showed up. This is by far the strongest elite men's field that we've had in the entire series here in the ERL. Everybody showing up for the championship, the addition of the world champ to the roster here this week. So to ride a top 20 against this field, very impressive week of racing here. So we go back to Neil Fryatt in the Chase 1 group. Looks like he's pretty calm back here with Turek and Andreasen. They're going to have a brief moment of easy riding, dare I say, in this group before someone lifts the tempo. And that someone looks like going to be Daniel Turek again.
It is indeed. So Turek lifts the tempo as they head out onto the final lap today here in Belgium on the Echelon Racing League Championships. Well, Turek pushing on, but he's not gone far because Fright and Andreasen are right with him. The gap at the moment, though, Brad, 1.4 kilometres in distance, and that's the gap that Osborne and Pucker have on this chasing group of three. This, for me, really is that race for third, fourth, and fifth, and it is becoming so tactical amongst these three riders. There on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the leading two, Osborne and Pucker, on the left-hand side of your screen, had to think then, and they are about to head into the Koppenberg for the final time.
No lack of action up in that front group either. You saw those guys out of the saddle, 5-6 watts per kilo. That's not easy riding. And again, they're doing the exact same thing that these three guys are doing on the right-hand side of your screen. Just little body blows, little jabs, trying to find the weaknesses in the other guys in the group. So we just watched one from Pucker testing Osborne. He responded to that one perfectly just at the bottom of the Koppenberg. Meanwhile, guys on the right side of the screen look like they're going to try and open up this gap early before they get there. Daniel Turek doesn't want to deal with Neil Fried on the Koppenberg. He's seen what Fried has done every time up and over those climbs. That is Fried's sort of golden land that he's looking for on this course. So I think he's trying to get away from that, maybe sag climb this a little bit, knowing that Fried's going to put in a massive effort. Group 3
Well,
on your screen right now.
yeah. Talking about a massive effort, Bruce Bird and Jean-Michel Lachance. I'm sure these riders were over like 24,
Oh,
25 seconds
wow.
back the last time we were in with them. But they've closed the gap now on the Nair group. That group of three riders, including Nair, in the top 10, about to be joined by Bird, Lachance, and Weinstein as well. This is now a group of 6. Wow,
That
what a
was
job. Do you know, we've
awesome.
said Bruce Bird's been phenomenal, but this group have just done the business.
The baller move from Bruce Berg. Not only does he make it up, he had time to hit the emote when he got there. Sat up, celebrated a little bit. That was
Bring
awesome.
it
Good
on.
on it. Man, I love watching this guy race. One of my favorite guys to watch race virtual. Bruce Berg makes it up to the group, drags a group with him, and all of a sudden, a very interesting race
Oh,
in group number 3 on the road. Meanwhile, big separation at the front. Look at this. Jason Osborne going, gone.
well, he is indeed, and I did wonder whether one world champion would do the business on the Koppenberg today, because Fem van Empel, the women's cyclocross world champion, did the business on the Koppenberg cyclocross race this season. That rainbow jersey obviously giving them wings up the climb, and boy, do they need it. Osborne pushing on 7.4 watts per kilo. Hayden Pucker now 12 seconds back. Whoa, what can Osborne do? Can he hold this enhanced pace, do you think, Brad, to the finish? Or do you think Pucker could close it down?
Well, he's got 9K with one more climb in between this and that 9K. That is a big problem for Hayden Pucker. That climb is going to be his biggest issue. The way that Osborne just dismantled Pucker the first time on the way up, I have a feeling Osborne could probably do it again on the Eichenberg here. So that's Hayden Pucker's biggest problem. What he needs to do is maybe just try and get within sight here. But at 22 seconds up and over now for Jason Osborne, getting a little inflated because Osborne's on the way down. Pucker's just working his way up and over. But this is an implosion from Hayden Pucker right now. So I think at some point he just starts to figure out how he's going to hold on to second place here. I don't think he needs to worry about Group 3 coming behind him. He should be strong enough to hold those guys to a minute. But Jason Osborne is putting in a massive effort on the front, and this is a race-winning move right here.
Well, there's a reason why he's wearing that rainbow jersey, and he's just showing us why. So Jason Osborne pushing on now onto the descent here on the Echelon Racing League Championships. This is the elite men's race, and Osborne at 29.5 kilometres, 29.6. It is coming really quickly. He's eating up the road on the descent. He's about to head into and onto the Eichenberg Hill. Hayden Pucker doing a strong job behind now, settling into that second place at 20 seconds.
Minute 20 ahead of the Chasers. Pretty comfortable with about 7K of racing to go. Meanwhile, Daniel Turek falling off of the Neil Friat Bjorn Andreasen group. So Turek in trouble now as Friat and Andreasen getting away here. Now, remember, Turek, the most aggressive guy, or I'll say one of the two most aggressive guys out of this group early on. So he took the big risk, took a big gamble, took a big swing at it, but doesn't look like that's going to pay off today as he gets dropped by Andreasen and Friat here.
Well, I'm looking at Daniel Turek and thinking he's putting in an awful lot of effort having been dropped from the group. And the reason I'm looking at that and then looking back down that list of riders on the right hand side, because the Nair, Thrall, Lachance, Bird group are at just over 20 seconds from Turek. And we know how well Bird in particular can drive on the front of a group in the latter stages of the race. He's got to keep the effort down and he's got to keep working, because that 5th place is not secure yet.
Oh. Fifth place, last paying spot, if I'm correct as well. So Daniel Turek got a lot of hungry guys breathing down his neck behind him, trying to nurse about a 20-second gap back to them. But he's got a lot of strong riders that are going to be working together, trying to make that chase. Now, Friat and Andreasen also find themselves in a familiar scenario. 2 riders together, pretty safely away, not really worried about what's in front of them or behind them. And now they got to figure out how they're going to sort this out in the race for 3rd place out there. So it's going to be really 3, I think, great finishes. If Turek comes together with Thrall, we'll watch Osborne and Pucker go head-to-head, then Friat and Andreasen go head-to-head to the line. And then I'm hoping there's a group sprint in the race for 5th.
Well, if there's a sprint between Friat and Andreasen, my money's on Friat today. He's been kicking out some phenomenal numbers. But Osborne, I don't think there's going to need to be a sprint today at the front. But I tell you something, Hayden Pucker is slowly clawing those seconds back.
Keeping it under 20, pretty good after getting dropped by the world champ. I mean, all things considered, that is not a bad recovery here from Hayden Pucker. So maybe finding a second wind here. We'll see if he's able to close or even maintain that gap at this point. Holding on to 20 seconds for the last 6K is a pretty tough thing to do against the world champ up the road. I'm looking at the wattage here and the course profile, though. Osborne just putting incredible numbers up on the board here against Hayden Pucker, consistently just doing a little higher watt per kilo than Pucker here. So I think Jason Osborne is just on the better form on a day like today. Hayden Pucker realizing that right now and settling into his 2nd place spot.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, I think, because once we get onto the flatlands, those absolute watts going to come into play, and take a look at the comparison on the absolute watts between the 2 riders. And I love the relationship between watts per kilo and absolute watts, and what it means and what it does for the riders. Coming into that flat run to the finish, Osborne is going to have to pay really close attention, but he's making the most of these climbs. He really is. That gap has now gone to 23 seconds. Oh, this is going to be good.
Well, these guys about to work their way down the hill. Big tell how a rider's feeling is how they pedal their way or not pedal their way off of the descent, working their way downhill. It's the easiest place to recover and not have to pedal, but it's also one of the easiest places to make up time and make up power. These guys still working their way up and over what should be the Eichenberg here, as Andreasen going to go on the attack. He has dropped Neil Friat here. This is a big moment in the race. Andreasen and Friat, who had been riding together, now Andreasen going to attack up and over, and he's got the gap that he was looking for over Neil Friat.
Oh, he has indeed. And Andreasen, you can see the effort and the work going in on the bike in the studio on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Is doing the business, because Friat is now at 11 seconds as Andreasen comes to the top of the Eichenberg. This could indeed be a move to take that 3rd spot. Look at that. Neil Friat's not even in the shot. There he is.
Oh, when you're beat, you're beat. And I think Neil Fryatt realizing that Andreessen just has that extra gear that he doesn't have today. So Fryatt not even trying to respond to that one. This is a scenario, especially this late in the race, where going too deep could be a fatal mistake, right? If you redline this and blow your engine up, well, you're going to find yourself into seventh, eighth, ninth position very easily if you, really blow yourself up and dig too deep. So I think Neil Fryatt is riding a smart race right now, realizing that chasing Bjorn Andreessen is maybe possible, but the problem is then he's got to stay with Andreessen, and the right thing to do here might be to just keep that engine running, keep it rolling along, and try and hold on to fourth place here.
Oh, yeah. So Fryer in four. Turek on the right hand side of your screen, just 5 seconds back. He can indeed still see Fryatt's rear wheel. 20 seconds further back is Nair and Thrall. That's going to be an interesting race. They're still on the climb at the moment, whereas Turek and Fryatt are now on the top. They've gone up and over at the Eichenberg for the last time. The last climb is now behind them. It's downhill and then a long, flat run to the finish line.
That's amazing how quickly Neil Fryatt's priorities have changed today from trying to hold on to Bjorn Andreessen's wheel to now trying to hold off Daniel Turek's wheel behind him as Turek is on the way up and Fryatt forced into a defensive position now to try and hold off Turek. Then you see Nair and Thrall back behind them. Zach Nair doing everything he can to try to reel in Daniel Turek here. And when Turek and Fryatt link up, that's going to be a problem for Zach Nair. I think that's going to minimize their chances of being able to catch those two guys because Turek and Fryatt will absolutely press each other. These are the two most aggressive guys from that group. I put Andreessen in that group as well, I guess. Bjorn Andreessen launched some big early attacks to try and force these moves. So no surprise to see the three most aggressive guys, the three left out of what was once a group of 8.
Well, Chirrut putting in a big dig at the moment to get onto the back of Fryatt's wheel. He's got the gap to 1 second, and now he's really digging. There's a big sprint coming up out of Dan Turek because he wants that back wheel. Look at Neil Fryatt respond. Neil Fryatt tried to dig, he tried to respond, and then I think he's just given up to the inevitable, letting the inevitable happen, letting Chirrut come back to his wheel. I think that sprint you were talking about, Brad, for the lower places could well be setting up nicely here.
I just want one. I just need one sprint out of the day today. So it looks like it might be Fryatt and Turek fulfilling my desire here as Daniel Turek going to put in an incredible ride to get up here. Turek is looking rough on the rider cam, I got to say, and he should. With the effort that he has done today, I'm surprised that this guy is able to hold on to the handlebars after the effort that he has put on. So a brilliant ride from Daniel Turek today, and now he's just got to hold on for about 4 more kilometers. Hang in there, Daniel.
Well, that's it now, isn't it? And if I was him, I'd be on Fryatt's wheel and I'd be sitting and making sure those numbers are green the whole way in until you get to the line. Because the only time you need to be on the front if you are Daniel Turek at the moment is at the finish line. You do not need to be on the front of that duo until that point. Neil Fryatt, however, may have something to say about that. And Thomas Thrall and Jonas Walton and Zach Nair could well close it down because of it.
So here's your situation headed into the last 3 kilometers. Jason Osborne has successfully soloed away from Hayden Pucker, who now sits 30 seconds down in second place on the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Then another solo effort from Bjorn Andreessen locking in third place on the bottom left. And the first battle of the day in the race for fourth between Neil Fryatt and Daniel Turek, who have now linked up on the bottom right of your screen. This is going to be a great final 3K. Turek going to try and lift things here on the bottom right. Those two guys are not going to go easily on this one today. So now Daniel Turek launching an attack on Neil Fryatt. He responds to it. These guys are going to go back and forth all the way to the line. There's not going to be any more easy riding between these two.
Well, there's not, but I have to say, Jason Osborne's got around 800 metres left to go until he sees the finish line. He's clear of Hayden Pucker by over 30 seconds at the moment. Wow, I'll tell you something, Hayden Pucker's closing it down, but he's going to run out of road. So Jason Osborne comes into the final stages of the Echelon Racing League's championships today, clear of Pucker, the rider who accompanied him on the breakaway in lap 1. He goes around the bend. He's got 500 meters to go.
The world champ joining the Echelon Racing League and calling his shot here at the championships, getting away and staying away for a solo win here on week 6 of the Echelon Racing League. Jason Osborne looking splendid in the world champion stripes. What an honor to have the world champ here at the Echelon Racing League as he will win the championships today in stunning fashion for the German.
So Jason Osborne sees the UCI banner signifying the end of the Echelon Racing League's championships today. He's going to come under the banner in first place. Your winner today, the world champion, Jason Osborne.
Osborne, the only man that could upset this rider, Hayden Pucker, for most of the season here in the Echelon Racing League. Pucker going to end up in a rare second place. He was beat only one other time that he lined up this season in the ERL. So the American going to have to settle for second in the championships as Hayden Pucker wraps up his day.
Well, Hayden Pucker settling for second place today on the Echelon Racing League, Brad. But in that USA National Championships, he has to be favourite.
The way that he's been riding this season, you're crazy if you don't put your money on Hayden Pucker headed into the national championships. But again, one thing I've learned on this platform, anything can happen on any given day. So it's still going to be an exciting one to watch for the American National Championships. He's going to be going up against guys like Neil Fryatt here in the group on the left-hand side of your screen, who is certainly one of those wild card riders. If Neil Fryatt does what Neil Fryatt did today, those are the kind of moves that can throw off a guy like Hayden Pucker.
Neil Fryatt's been putting in phenomenal performances throughout the whole of the Racing League season. Neil Fryatt, Daniel Turek, neck and neck. They are 50 seconds back on Bjorn Andreasen. He's on the right-hand side of your screen. He's going to come in now with around 700 metres to go. He's got third place tied up. He's 47 seconds clear of Turek and Fryatt, who are going to be battling for fourth and fifth.
Andreasen had a really interesting ride today. He was super aggressive early on, one of the first attackers early that really forced the split in the group. Then he kind of got into trouble mid-race. He wasn't looking so hot to about halfway through, and then had a really strong second half of the day to get away from that Fryatt, Turek, Thrall, Nair group when he launched his attack and never looked back. So once again, Bjorn Andreasen's gamble, I'll call this paying off as he's going to roll across the line for third.
Yeah, that's brilliant riding from Andreasen today, and really managing to establish that break in the latter stages of the race and being rewarded by turning around that corner and seeing the banner in third place today. 54 seconds clear of the chase and race that is going to unfold behind. But Andreasen comes across the line today for third place in the Echelon Racing League Championships.
Nice job out there, Bjorn. Well done today. And now the battle of the day. Neil Fryatt and Daniel Turek going to the line together as those guys inside the last 500 meters waiting. This is like waiting for the lottery numbers to drop.
Well, it is indeed, and Fryatt and Turek have had us on the edge of our seats all race because of the battles between the two of them. And then in the latter stages, Turek has done nothing but sit on Neil Fryatt's wheel. Well, Turek starts to open up at 5.4 watts per kilo. Neil Fryatt starts to kick at 6. They can see the banner. Turek kicks at 12 watts per kilo. What has Fryatt got? Fryatt kicks at 19 watts per kilo, goes up and over the top of Dan Turek. It's Neil Fryatt, the man with the sprint.
Watching the sprint on the rider cam, except that was awesome. I love watching these guys finish on the way. And now Thrall and Nair are going to sprint to the line here as well. They're going to put in a good dig. They got Jonas Walton with them right on the wheel behind him. But I think Thrall going to get there. That'll bring Jean-Michel Lachance up next. The Canadian wrapping up his day here as well inside the top 20. But an exceptional sprint just before that. Got to go back and give a little credit to those guys for an awesome show.
That was just phenomenal and so good to be watching Fryatt at the same time as the race for the line unfold. Now, that Canadian Championships on the 8th and 9th of February, Thrall, Lachance, and Walton all coming together. They've all had really strong performances today. And Bruce Bird, let's not forget him in the mix. The Canadian Championships could be a really good watch as well.
We'll watch one last kick here from Bruce Bird as he finishes up. Nice job out there for the Canadian. Be looking forward to the national championships coming up here as Bird finishes up his day solo, just behind LaChance and holding off the American David Weinstein behind him. Well done out there. Thanks for the great riding this season, Bruce Bird, as he wraps up his championship here at the ERL.
He does indeed, coming underneath the banner, and we'll see him sit back down. And congratulations, Bruce Bird has been great to watch throughout this whole league.
Well, no surprise at the top of the leaderboard, the world champ making his appearance in the ERL and dominating a solo win, 24 seconds ahead of ERL champion Hayden Pucker, and then Bjorn Andreasen soloing to third. Behind them, 2:36 back from Osborne. Fryatt and Turek putting on a great show out there today in the battle for fourth as the American just barely beats Turek to the line in a great two-up sprint to the finish, with Tom Thrall and Zach Nair battling behind them, where the Canadian got the best of those two. And then an all-Canadian sweep, 8th, 9th, and 10th for Walton, LaChance, and Bird to round out your top 10 in the ERL Championships today. Another great race here on the Ghent, Belgium course. Really looking forward to this elite women's race after an exceptional elite men's race, especially with the addition of the world champion here. So going to be a really interesting elite women's race coming up as we get ready for that one up next. We also want to take a chance to highlight some of our amateur categories that we're racing earlier in the day today. We had Riley Pickering on that, covering the B&C races.
I'm Riley Harvey, and this is the Echelon Racing League men's Cat B event that took place earlier on today on my whoosh. JJ Miller applied pressure from the start line, quickly opening a gap on the group of 13 seconds, and briefly was out of sight before the pack quickly brought him in and left him hanging off the front. Once regrouped, Jonathan Bisson was once again setting the pace, with many of the other contenders joining in to keep the pack running at a fast pace. With the laps now ticking by, the group thinned down to 28. 10 kilometres completed, and the constant changes of pace now affecting. Riders dangerously yo-yoing off the back, and one by one, they are losing the battle to stay in that precious draft pocket. The front group continued thinning, and with a dangerous breakaway of 3, now 8 seconds up the road. Jose Montero Oviedo being asked a question of whether he'd give chase. JJ Miller and Scott Cunningham both worked together, looking to drop Bisson. But Cunningham looks to be the strongest. And pushing on, is this a solo breakaway with 7 kilometres to go? Cunningham continues pushing and opens up an 11-second gap on Miller and Bisson, who have now regrouped and are battling for second. Cunningham eased slightly, with still a substantial gap on the chasing two, and allowed himself time to appreciate the victory. The battle would be for second and third. And as it was, Miller just beats Bisson to the second place. I'm Riley Harvey, and this is the Echelon Racing League. The women's race took place earlier on today, and this is the Cat C race. With a strong pace being set from the off by Andrea Smith and Valentina Disenia, it wasn't long before the race was fragmented, and two distinct groups had formed. The lead group and the chase group. Ange Kwapik, 6 kilometres in, found herself between the two groups, battling to try and get back to the lead group, and fighting the inevitability of dropping back to the now quite distant chase group. It wasn't long before she was joined with Jill Sargentson and Tatiana Sanchez, and then Palma Mongelli, dropping the lead group numbers now to only 9. And the drop riders were isolated, fighting hard and riding on their own. Micro accelerations in the lead group looked to be pushing more riders to the limit. Valentina Disenia, with strong legs, opened a slight gap on the group. Smith, the strongest chaser, but perhaps not strong enough. Valentina, with over 6 kilometres to go, seems to have broken the will of the pack and is staying out solo. Disenia looking to have secured first place, and long-range attacks start coming from the pack behind for the second place. The pack stilled once again before attack. KJ Phillips unleashing phenomenal power and taking Montoya with her, surprisingly destroying the established lead that Disenia had. Disenia held on to a lead of now less than 0.2 of a second. Phillips taking second place and Montoya third.
And with our amateur races wrapping up, getting ready for elite women up next. Once again, Brad Soner and Emma Martin joining you here as we get ready for a epic showdown on the Koppenberg. And Emma, I got to say, that has been the biggest story of the racing, I think, today, is how these two big climbs have affected the racing. So really looking forward to this elite women's race.
Well, I am too, and I am because we've had 4 different winners over the 5 stages in the elite women's race. Today they head to Belgium to the Ghent course, 37.5 kilometres. It's 3 laps of the course below. They come out of the pen, and at 2.2 kilometres they go up the Koppenberg. They come down the other side, and then they head up the Eichenberg hill. They descend off of the Eichenberg, and it is pancake flat to the finish line. 3 laps, remember. That's 6 climbs, giving a total of 412 metres of climbing today. Now, I know there are some really strong women in this race. Hermansen will go well today, but I think Van Heuling, Gallegos, Penner, Aitken, all of those riders that we've seen at the front of this elite women's race will ride strongly, because it's a real balance of sprinting effort to hit that high power and climbing ability.
I haven't seen a ton of climbing this season, but in the brief moments that these courses have gone uphill, we've been able to glean a little bit of information. Names like Celine Colombi, you see the Italian on your list, very good climber out of the group. If she races today, I would expect to see some more of that aggressive riding from her. But Hermansen, Van Heuling, Gallegos, Aitken, what a battle it's been this season for all of those riders. As you said, so many different winners so far this season. It's really been a pleasure to watch the overall battle of this elite women's field week after week here in the ERL.
And just 5 points separating first and second, Hermansen and Van Heuling. And then 5 points only separating third and fourth, Gallegos and Aitken. 4 different winners, 5 races, 5 points separating 1 and 2, and 5 points separating 3 and 4. It couldn't have been much closer.
Well, there you go. We couldn't have written a better start to this one today as we pick up live action out on course with your elite women's group. Again, we are racing the elites and the category B women together, so you'll see yellow and red jerseys out there on course, but this is a front group of all elites right now, as you see Celine Colombi leading the way here with Hermansen, Gallegos, Van Heuling, Penner, Meyer in that group, and then Melissa Aitken, another big name on our list, just dangling 10 seconds off the back which should be the first time up and over this climb. We'll see if Aiken able to recover from that as she tries to work her way back up to the front group. Looks like Camila Alberg leading our women's B group over on the right-hand side of your screen. First rider in the red jersey finds herself all alone. It's been really interesting watching the women's B riders able to race with the elites, because in some of the early races we saw a mixing of the groups, and that allowed for some really, really strong performances from some of the women's B riders out there. So it looks like Alberg on really good form today in that category.
Yeah, definitely. And it's going to be interesting to see what she can do. But at the moment, the question is, can Melissa Aitken get back into this leading group? And my call is yes. So Aitken closing the gap at the moment. It was 10 seconds. It's now 6. She's continuing to push on those pedals and push on the power as she's gone over the top of the Eichenberg Hill and onto the descent. She can see the leading group of 6 ahead. And look at that. The gap is now down to 4 seconds. So Melissa Aitken is going to make this group of 6 women 7 as they've gone through the Koppenberg and the Eichenberg for the first time on lap 1 today.
Massive effort for Aiken here, putting in a huge amount of wattage. You see that very low cadence. She's got a massive gear that she's pushing right now, keeping that cadence to 66 rotations per minute. That is not much. You can see her smashing those pedals underneath her. So Aiken's going to work her way up here. That'll be no problem for her, as she will close this gap and make it 7 in the front group. And now we'll see if Aiken gets just a little bit of rest, or if they hit her again. That's her worst case scenario, that as soon as she gets into this group, somebody else decides to launch a rocket here. So we'll see if Aiken gets any time to recover.
Well, and let's not forget, Melissa Aitken did this in round 1 on the Golden Gate Bridge course. She got dropped on the climb every time, and she slowly clawed her way back, and she ended up taking 4th on the stage that day, because yet again she made the catch on the last lap. This is a very similar course with a good significant part of the lap flat after the 2 climbs. So Aitken, I think, is going to be one to watch today, because we know she's got the dedication and commitment, and she is not frightened of closing a gap.
Meanwhile, Nicole Meyer having a little chat. Not sure if she's talking strategy or maybe someone on the AirPods. So we'll see if we can keep an eye on that, as Meyer, again, just trying to figure out what to do about this front group. This is a good time to take inventory and kind of look at the other riders in this group, figure out who you need to worry about, figure out who you can beat in a sprint if this one stays together, and then just get ready for those climbs coming up here. That's really all you can do on the flat section here. So they're up and over the first of the day, and now get to enjoy a little bit of rest on a 0% gradient right now.
Well, Meyer and Van Hooling teams on that next squad. So that's going to be really interesting, because both of them in the leading group at 8.9 kilometres. 8.4 kilometres at 500 metres back down the road. Michelle Gagnon, the Canadian rider in the Category 1, the elite race, is behind Camilla Olberg, the rider we were in with not too long ago, leading that Category B race. Gagnon there, she's 15 seconds clear of a bevy of Canadian riders. This is going to be a good competition, I think, when it comes to the Canadian National Championships, because Stephanie Briggs, Bowmans and Lemon are all in the chase group behind. So Gagnon trying to stay clear of the 3 Canadians behind. Oh, do you know, it's only a couple of weeks. The 8th and 9th of February is that Canadian National Championships, and I am sure they are all targeting it.
A good time to be on good form, that's for sure. Michelle Gagnon looking good heading into her nationals, but you also got to look at names like Tiffany Penner up here on the front group. She'll be going up against her in the elites, as our leaders have made the separation now, and a pretty easy ride, all things considered, in this group right now. 2.5, 3 watts per kilo. That's zone 1 or 2 for most of these riders. Seems like where this one is really going to play out will be on those 2 hills. They're just going to hit each other as hard as they can up and over the hills. What's going to happen is a bunch of riders are going to be chasing all day, and then eventually eventually you'll see that one chase that they just can't close, right? You're going to see the gaps open on the climb. They'll spend the rest of the lap trying to close the gap, and then eventually they won't be able to. So slowly but surely, this group, I think, will get whittled down, but they still got a lot of racing to go. So I don't know if we're going to see any separation this lap, maybe none next lap, but eventually this effort will catch up with one or two riders in this group, just like it did in the elite men's race.
Oh, this is such a steady state pace at the moment in this leading group. They really are recovering on the flat rather than racing each other. So Penner, Hermansen, Aitken, Mayer, Columbi, Gallegos and Van Hooling are the 7 riders in the leading group. And I think the core job they're achieving at the moment is bringing their heart rates down and recovering.
Well, this group's so evenly matched. They've all raced against each other all season. So this is a group that knows each other well. There's not a lot of question marks in terms of the form of the other riders. You know, there's some riders that maybe raced against in other series, or you saw them a year ago, maybe in the ERL or something like that. But to race week after week in the same series with the same riders over and over, this front group has a very, very good read on each other. I don't think anyone in this group believes that anyone else is strong enough to get away and stay away in a solo effort. This group has been so evenly matched all season. You just don't have those dominant riders like a Jason Osborne in the elite men's race. So that's making for a really interesting scenario at the front here, because this one is so evenly matched. I would not want to be an odds maker in Vegas on a day like today trying to bet on this group at the front of the women's elite race.
Well, I have to agree with you, Brad. But also, these women in here will know who the core good sprinters are, and they'll know that Hermansen and Van Hooling have gone neck and neck in those sprints, and it's all about timing. They're not going to want to take those two to the finish line, so somebody's got to do something on laps 2 and 3 if they want to get to that finish line without those 2 sprinters in the pack. But I tell you something, it's going to have to be something phenomenal because the 2 sprinters, Van Hooling and Hermansen, it's the type of course that suits them.
Penn are going to make it up, back up into the group to join here. And then I think Aitken got there, Columbi there. And they're all going to rejoin back together in this group. I'm watching Michelle Gagnon on the right side of the screen. That's going to be the closest rider with a shot to add another rider to this front group. And honestly, she's got a good shot right here, because that front group just isn't putting a lot of pressure on each other or on the group. So Gagnon going to have a chance to close it down. I would do it right here. Nice little stretch, nice wide open section. If Gagnon can just put in that little bit more effort, she's going to be back up into this group. And there is a nice draft waiting for her up there. Yeah. Not only is the group big enough to get a draft, but they're riding very calmly. So it's a nice draft to be in if she can get there.
Yeah, so Michelle Gagnon, the current reigning Canadian cycling esports champion, goes back onto the group, making it a lead group of 9 riders. Tiffany Penner was 4th in that championships in 2024, and I think those two are going to battle royale for 2025.
Gagnon going to settle into the rotation here, right up into the group. And a really good-looking pace line here. I'm pretty impressed with the gameplay here, sorting these riders out, getting them in line here. So I would say we're probably waiting until the next climb to see an attack coming out of this group, but I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these flatlanders try and launch it. Columbi is my only rider in this group that I think is going to target the climbs here. Watching her the last few weeks, that's really been her MO in the Echelon Racing League. And so to me, that's the only rider that really stands out as someone who would be waiting for the climbs. I think everyone else is so evenly matched in this group. It's making it really tough to call, and a really interesting race.
Yeah, and also interesting to see Camilla Olberg, the Category B leader, having made connection with that group as well. So the pace coming off of the front group of 6 riders has allowed the other riders to come in. Aitken first, then Olberg, the leader in the Category B race, and then Gagnon. So really interesting to see that front group swell. Now, This group are not that far behind. So Julia Lenman is 8 seconds up the road, which makes her 3 seconds off the leading group. Then Briggs is here as well. So look at that. I think the leaders in the category B race are all going to come together as well. And we're going to see Ulberg joined by Lenman and maybe by Briggs and Bowmans.
Absolutely. They could do this in the next kilometer or so. There's a little separation off the back of this group. They're going to close back in. But if this group keeps riding the way that they have been, I would absolutely agree. I think there's 2 more on the way up to join this group. I mean, you can look at the wattage that Briggs is doing back there, 4 watts per kilo with Diane Bowmans. They're doing 2.5 or 3 average up in this front group. So the numbers are there for Briggs and Bowmans to make it up now. As long as that front group keeps doing what they've been doing all day, and now Bowman's got them in sight, locked in, and just slowly reeling it back.
Well, the Koppenberg and the Eichenberg seem to be the places this elite women's race is lighting up. A steady state transition back around to the Koppenberg for the second time. They're at the 13-kilometer point. So there's around 1,800 meters to go now for the leading group before they hit the base of the Koppenberg again. I think we're going to see this group smash up again. But if the same thing happens on lap 2, Brad, and those riders who get dropped on the climbs are able to get back on, there's got to be a bit of a tell, hasn't there, for our leading group, that if they don't lift the pace on the flat every lap, the group is going to swell.
We're going to get a lot of information when they hit the Koppenberg here one more time. You can just see it starting to appear in the elevation profile of the leaders on the left-hand side of your screen. Meanwhile, Bowman's and Briggs about to get there. They've got to get there before the bottom of the climb. That's for sure. If you want a shot, you've got to at least be in contact by the time you hit the climb. They're going to make that contact right here. A brilliant ride from Diane Bowman's as she joins up with this front group. And that's going to make it 12 now up in the front. So these leaders are certainly paying the price for their conservative riding today, letting more and more riders in the door. But now Stephanie Briggs going to try and lift it a little bit just before they get to the bottom of this climb.
I love that. She comes on to the back of the group. She continues the pace that she closed them down at and goes to the front of the group and just carries on as though the elite women, a number of whom were at the World Championships in October, well, you know what? You're not going fast enough. You've got to follow me. Great job.
A Brit. Yeah, she's in a sweet spot right now. That's the only way to explain it. She's right where she wants to be. That trainer feels like nothing underneath her right now at 3.5 watts per kilo in zone 3, right where she wants to be. Stephanie Briggs is just enjoying riding her bike right now. This is a great feeling when you find this perfect little zone to settle into, and Briggs going to stay on it in the approach to the Koppenberg here.
And Bowmans, Aitken, Lemon, Arlberg, Hermansen, Mayer, Van Hooling, Gallegos are all behind her. I tell you something, she'd be a very happy rider if she could just turn her head over her shoulder and take a look at who is who in that chase group behind. Congratulations and smart riding to Briggs. The Koppenberg is coming. The Koppenberg is coming for the second time. This is lap number 2 of 3. This is going to be interesting.
Nobody launching out of the group yet. We did see some sort of sag climbing earlier in the day. Haven't seen any of that yet out of the group. They're going to stick together to the bottom of this one as we go on board with Lisa Hermansen locked in. Look at the focus for Hermansen right now on the rider cam. That's the biggest threat to this climb. They've all got the legs to do it, right? We know that they all have the engine to make it up over this Koppenberg. It's where and how you use that effort. And one of the biggest things in the gameplay here on My Whoosh is responding to the moves, right? You have to be able to ramp that power up and use it when you need it. And so that's why Hermansen is so locked into the screen right now. She's waiting for the first move to come. You see how she stands up, preloading the spring here. She knows there's an attack coming. She knows someone is going to hit it hard on the Koppenberg, and she just wants to make sure that she's there to respond to it.
And it kicks so hard early in this climb. It's over 15% in the early slopes, and you can't hold the effort. You can't wait to put the kick in the latter stages of the climb. You really have to commit full bore at the base of the climb if you want to stay with the leading group on the Koppenberg here on the course in Ghent. And Aitken now coming to the fore. Hermansen, Van Hooling. Look at the look of concentration on Liz Van Hooling's face as we drop in with her at the moment. They are about to hit the steep slopes. They're on the foothills, and Briggs still on the front, but Meyer, Hermansen, Van Hooling, Gallegos, Ulberg, Penner are all there.
And once again, this is pretty much just going to be a straight up wattage smash from bottom to top again today as they go into the red zone. I wouldn't expect for them to let up out of this red zone until they get to the top of this one, as Meyer and Penner going to get to the front. Now, again, the action is going to be what's happening at the back. It's about who's not surviving in this group, who's getting dropped here. The front group probably going to stay pretty close together up and over, but it's about who has a manageable gap once they go over the top of this one. So I'm looking at names like Hermansen, Alberg, just a little bit further back. Those are the riders that are going to be in trouble here, as Tiffany Penner leading the charge about halfway up the Koppenberg here.
Oh, she is indeed. And Penner, Van Hooling, Gallegos, Columbia, Meyer. There is nothing to separate them. Hermansen just slightly off the pace at the moment, but I think she's going to stay with them because the respite is coming. It's been exceptionally steep to this point. They're coming to the top of the climb, and the gradient will get easier. I say that it's 12%, it wasn't 16, but Van Hooling, Gallegos, Columbia, Hermansen, Meyer, Gagnon and Ulberg are the riders who have been dropped. They're the latter riders coming into the group as we drop in with Elise Gallegos. You can see her up and out of the saddle, pushing at the moment. She's in fourth place. She's right at the front of the group, and she's exactly where she needs to be.
This is looking like it's going to end up 6 over the top of the Koppenberg as they hit what I guess we'll call the summit of this little berg here. You see Aitken a little further back at 11 seconds into 7th here. So Aitken going to have to recover from that as they get ready for the Eichenberg coming up next here. But it's still a manageable gap here for Melissa Aitken. If Alberg and Gagnon can link up with her and work together as a group of 3, they can get back into this one if they cooperate and if that front group goes back into the conservative riding mode that they were on before they hit this climb here. So we're going to watch these, what should be 3 riders. I think you're going to see Gagnon on her way up into this group pretty soon here. There she is in the yellow jersey a little further back. These 3 going to link up, and they absolutely have the potential to catch these leaders up the road. So this is going to be a great one to watch as these 3 try and work their way back into the leading group.
Yeah, and interesting, Melissa Aitken not backing too much off of the pace on to the descent and going back into that steady state that she finds very comfortable in terms of closing those gaps down. And the leading group, interesting to see whether they've backed off the pace on the descent to recover as much as possible before they kick into the Eichenberg Hill. Now, the fastest time on the Eichenberg Hill, racing in the women's race, in the elite women's race, that the time is held by Kate McCarthy, the world champion for 2024. 2 minutes 32 seconds on the Eichenberg Hill segment. For that 1.4 kilometre climb. It's going to be interesting to see what our women can do today. But Maya, Columbia, Penner, Van Hooling, Hermansen and Gallegos are all in that leading group. Melissa Aitken now at 9 seconds. She's brought it back a little bit already.
Really not much of any separation to speak of up and over that climb, but you see the Eichenberg looming in the distance on their elevation profile in the upper right-hand corner. I would think that's what Aitken is looking at here. Again, you want to try and get into this group before you get to the bottom of the climb, so there's a little bit of urgency for that chase group behind these riders. You certainly want to get there before the road goes uphill again, but that elevation profile is rapidly closing here for the chasers behind him. Alberg at 7 seconds now to get back up there. This is one of the hardest gaps to close because you can taste it. You can see the riders up the road, but then it starts going uphill like this, and all of a sudden they get a little farther and farther and farther away.
Now, this climb, this second climb, the Eichenberg Hill, not as steep as the Koppenberg. We saw the Koppenberg go to 15-16% in the early stages. The Eichenberg Hill not as steep. In fact, an average gradient of 4.5% over the 1.4 kilometres of the climb. I think, as we've talked about, Brad, these women are so well matched. We're not going to see any riders get dropped off of this group on this climb today. There you go. Prediction on the board.
Here we go. Back up onto the climb. Columbia lets a little space open up as once again Tiffany Penner leads the charge. Most aggressive rider in my book by far today for the way that she's been just dominating on these climbs. Certainly not afraid to ride hard at the front here. And once again, this story is going to be at the back of the group because I'm not really seeing anyone who's looking for separation in this group. All they're trying to do is force the other riders into at least a yellow, orange, or red zone, right? You want to make sure everyone's riding into their highest level here. So you see a small gap opening up right now back to Nicole Meyer. She should be able to cover this one, no problem. I think she's going to stay in this group. Melissa Aitken now 15 seconds back with Alberg. So it looks like Aitken working her way up, passing Alberg on the way up into 7th here on the Eichenberg.
Oh, they are indeed, but this group really working. They are so well matched, and we just continue to say it, but take a look at what is on the screen. 6 riders went into the base of the Eichenberg climb together. 6 riders, I think, are going to go over the top together. Hermansen is leading from Van Hooling, Columbi, Gallegos, Meyer, and Penner. We're in with Nicole Meyer on the screen at the moment. You can see the concentration to stay in the group, but stay in the group she is going to.
Well, 2 times up and over these climbs and still together. That means that it's really all going to come down to the last lap out there today, the last 2 climbs to sort out this front group. Those will be really their last 2 shots for any separation today because it's going to be really hard to get away on the flats from this group. So the last 2 times up and over the climbs will be really the only opportunity for any separation up in that front group. Meanwhile, watching Alberg and Aitken, who have come together, Michelle Gagnon drifting a little further back at 13 seconds off of these 2. But even for these riders, 39 seconds up to the front group with the last lap, that's right on the edge of being doable as the front group goes up and over the climb. I think we'll probably see that compress a little bit as these riders finish up their climb, but we'll get a better read once they're on the flats and figure out if there's a chance for these riders to catch the leaders.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Is there a chance and can they push on? And the question is, will it happen? It's a much bigger gap this time round that Melissa Aitken would have to claw back, but she's got Camilla Olberg with her this time. So she could get some help if Olberg wants to help the elite racer. Olberg leading the women's category B race. And for me, Olberg is going to be protecting that and making sure she doesn't put herself too far into the red until we come onto those 2 climbs again on the final lap, because Michelle Gagnon is behind, but Briggs is behind as well. So is Bowman's, and it's not over yet, that women's B race either. So Olberg is going to be protecting her position.
Alberg trying to hold on to that wheel as long as she can, riding with Melissa Aitken, and then these riders on the right-hand side of your screen trying to close what is still a 26-second gap up to Alberg. So I think that's going to maintain relatively easier, call that 50 seconds up to Alberg here for these 2. So that is a little bigger than expected. That's going to be tough to overcome with not much racing left, just about, let's call it 17.5K from right here with Elise Gallegos.
Well, I hope Gallegos has had her coffee today because she's going to need it now. They're coming down to the base of the Eichenberg Hill. There's the flat run now to the end of this lap at 25 kilometres. And then there is 1 full lap of the Ghent course in Belgium, ready and waiting for this leading group of 6 women. Celine Columbi, Nicole Meyer, Elise Gallegos, Tiffany Penner, Liz Van Hooling, Lisa Hermansen, and who have I missed? It's a tricky question as they're jumping all over your screen.
Well, they're in the perfect rotating pace line here, so it makes it a little tougher to read the leaderboard because they're swapping positions at the front, almost riding like a team time trial in this group. When they get onto the flats, they're extremely well organized. This group absolutely has this sort of connection in the front group that they're able to ride very smoothly in this group. Not everyone can do what these riders are doing. There's a skill to be had in sort of playing the game of my whoosh, where you really have to be able to, I call it modulating your power, right? You have to be able to just read when is the right time to let off, just like a good bike rider in real life knows how to ride a pace line, right? That comes with experience, that comes with time on the bike. And same thing with these riders. They have figured out how to ride as a unit here on my whoosh.
Oh, they have indeed. And it really is one of the skills that you need. Every single discipline, I think, has its own set of tactics and its own set of skills. And you have to get the skills dialed. You can't just rely on brute force and power. Those skills absolutely essential. And the women here today on the Echelon Racing League Championships race in Ghent in Belgium, really showing us and demonstrating how that's done. Also, for me, every single one of those women in that lead group, in that 6-up leading group, will want their what's in green. They are all going to want to be in the draft. And that will also be one of the reasons why you're seeing so much movement in the pack.
Now, if this one drops too low, if the average wattage, say, dips below like 2 watts per kilo, there will be someone in this group who's like, all right, we got to ride harder than this, and they will separate. So the group's walking a fine line right now of riding relatively easily, but not too easy that it invites someone to attack. They haven't gotten to that point yet because somebody will identify in this group that, all right, I can do the math of this is the best that they can ride. I can get away from this one solo. That hasn't happened yet, but there's a lot of looking around going on in this group, just waiting for somebody to be the first to go. And I think we're both in agreement that that probably won't come until the road goes uphill for the last 2 times on the last lap here.
I agree with you, Brad. I think this race is all about the final lap today, and it is going to be one heck of a final lap. I tell you who I have got my eye on, though. And that's Melissa Aitken. She's brought the 40-plus second gap back to 25 seconds so far. And the reason she's done that is because she sat at around 3.94 watts per kilo, whilst this group are rolling at around 2 to 2.5. So Gallegos, Van Hooling, Penner and Colombi are the riders on your screen. 4 of this 6-rider leading group. And Melissa Aitken is the only rider leading the charge to make it 7.
Aitken can 100% do this and get back up into the group. My concern is where she'll be when she gets there and, whether or not she'll be able to hang with it. So we may have to gather some more information about the scenario behind Melissa Aitken to kind of figure out her strategy and get a look into what's going on in her eyes. Here's on board with Melissa Aitken right now. She's got Camila Alberg with her. That's good news. 19 seconds back to Gagnon. I think that gives her enough breathing room to try and go up and get this group. You can just see him at the top of Aitken's screen here. So the problem for Aitken, though, is that Alberg's not going to help her at all, right? It's a category B rider here riding with an elite. Alberg is getting a free ride on Melissa Aitken with no reason at all to help her because Alberg is leading that women's category B race. And so Gagnon, the only rider that she needs to worry about, and Alberg's getting a free ride right now. So really no reason for the red jersey to do work here. Aitken is going to be on her own. The Americans got to try and make up what is now down to 8 seconds up to those riders. Again, this one at one point was 40 seconds back, and now Melissa Aitken is going to try and close her second big gap of the day. Remember, she already did this once to get back into the group, got dropped on the climb again, and now has spent the entire lap working her way back up to this group.
Well, the queen of the catch is what Melissa Aitken is. And Camilla Alberg absolutely being handed a gift today, leading that women's category B race. All she's got to do is sit on that wheel of Melissa Aitken in the draft and maintain her lead in that women's B category. A really interesting effort from Melissa Aitken yet again. We've seen her do this time and time again, Brad. She really, really is a rider. Look at that. The catch is made.
And then out of the saddle, is she going to go right by him here? Oh, Melissa Aitken, brutal out here today. She's going to make the catch and just keep on going. You know, she realized how easy that group is riding here, and now she is going to exploit that weakness and force Nicole Meyer to chase here as Melissa Aitken makes the catch and then goes right by him. Brutal riding here from Aitken, but I love it.
Well, her rhythm, not theirs. You know, sometimes the up, down pace of the rest, recovery, push on hard is not what you like as a rider. A lot of riders like a steady tempo pace. I know, hands up, if you give me a 10-kilometre climb with a similar gradient all the way, I'd much rather than going through a section of really, really steep rollers. And Aitken just, well, do you know, they were napping. They were napping, thinking 40 plus seconds, we're well clear. No, you're not. Aitken can do it. She's just done it. You're too busy looking at each other. And I think they just, well, I'm not sure that they bothered actually, Brad, because I think they just think it's all down to those last two climbs.
Now Celine Colombi sees the potential for a breakaway here with Aiken. She's like, finally, someone else who's motivated in this front group after what has been pretty boring riding on the flats here. Colombi, I think, has now been ignited by Aiken joining this group, and everybody lifting the tempo now. The average has gone up by about 2 watts per kilo, which is almost double what they were doing earlier with the addition of Aiken to this group. So I think that was a big wake-up call for this group, seeing Melissa Aiken not only join this group but go right by them. It's like, all right, we're going to have to lift this tempo. If someone can catch us, pass us, and attack us, Nicole Meyer realizing that that's going to be a problem. So she's going to lift this one up to 6-7 watts per kilo here. It is on at the front of the elite women's race, just over 10K to the finish.
Well, they are just coming to the end of lap 2 now at 25 kilometres. They're going out onto lap 3, and the pace finally getting lit up by Nicole Meyer on the front here. Tiffany Penner, Van Hoolinga, Lagos, Columbia, Hermansen, and Aitken, 7 riders in the leading group. Camilla Ulberg, the leader of the women's category B race in the red jersey. All credit to Ulberg because she is hanging on to the back of that group, even though the pace has lifted.
You can see the desperation, even in Alberg's avatar here. You can see the urgency in her pedaling, trying to catch back onto this group. They're going to give her a nice little gift here and let up a little bit after some intense racing across the line to start that lap. Now things calm down again, but that was a very, very good test for all the other riders in this group. I think Celine Colombi comes out of this one with a gold star for showing some aggression, showing that she's willing to ride. But again, the big test will come when they hit the Koppenberg, and you're going to just start seeing it on the elevation profile for the leaders. Michelle Gagnon, meanwhile, at 40 seconds back to them, all things considered, pretty good for the solo Canadian today.
Yeah, and talking about Canadians, Bowmans and Briggs are the 2 Canadian riders behind her who are 2nd and 3rd in the women's category B race. So it is, well, it's a significant gap of over a minute that Camilla Ulberg has, but she has been working so hard to stay with Aitken and then so hard to stay on the back of that leading group. She's got to be convinced that a minute is a big enough gap and that she doesn't blow on those last 2 climbs.
A fine line of trying to stay with the group, but also playing a little bit of defense back to second place behind you. You got to make sure that you're not, as they say, stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime here in the U.S. So she's kind of fighting a battle on 2 fronts here. Gagnon just doing what she needs to do. We saw her rider cam earlier looking very comfortable. She's in that scenario now where you just kind of lock into what your engine can do and just pin it right there. And this is where really understanding your numbers come into play in terms of watts per kilo, what you can do for how long, what your max effort is in this scenario. It's a very good test of you versus yourself.
Well, exactly. And she's set at what seems to be, from her camera, quite a comfortable pace, but she's bringing the gap down, you know, because this front group have sat up again. Now, on the top right-hand corner, you can see the Koppenberg coming. You can see it there. The riders can see exactly what you can see on the screen, viewers, and they will know it's coming, and they'll know that that gradient is going to kick to 15, 16% very, very quickly. Well, I wonder if they're thinking this group could get smaller. They were tied together, these 6 riders, before Aitken and Allberg came into the group. We saw 6 riders go over the top of the Koppenberg together and then the Eichenberg together. And then we saw Aitken and Allberg catch them. Can there be any other scenario, Brad, other than the 6 elite women going over the top of the Koppenberg together again?
I would say there's maybe a chance that it's 5 with one like 2 or 3 seconds off the back of the group. That is probably the most separation that I foresee in this front group just because they've been riding so locked in together. But we're going to find out when they hit the bottom of this climb. Checking in with some of our other battles on course. You see on the bottom left-hand side of your screen the race for 10th place with Stephanie Briggs leading the way there. And then Julia Lehman a little bit farther back on the right-hand side of your screen in the battle for 13th. Looks like she's locked in with the American Melissa Tuma, who had a good sprint last week. So Tuma and Lehman working out their group of 2 in the bottom right-hand side. And then we talked about the solo Michelle Gagnon up in the top right, trying to hold on to her spot just behind this group by about 14 seconds. She is making progress. You can just barely see the group at the top of her screen. So we might be looking at another comeback out here today. But the problem is a massive climb looming in the distance.
Well, that's it. And will she make the juncture to the group? They are just going around the corner ahead of her before the climb. And it is going to be really touch and go, I think. As soon as they get there, it's going to explode again. And Michelle Gagnon has done a sterling job to close that gap down and sat at that comfortable pace for her. We took that window into her pain cave and she looked as though she'd picked her pace for the rest of the race, and it's worked for her in terms of bringing her back. But very, very shortly they are about to hit the Koppenberg for the last time, for the 3rd time today, and it is going to be cobbles under the wheels.
Oh, Gagnon just barely could hold off the back of this group. So close, she can taste it here. Same thing for Gagnon. Just make sure you don't blow up the engine, right? Just make sure you survive up and over this climb, and then you're able to go over the Eichenberg. As we tune in back at the front of the group, and they're back into the red zone here. Gallegos, Hermansen, Penner, the 3 at the front, but groups still mostly together. Colombi getting gapped a little bit off the back of this group. She's reporting at 2 seconds back on the screen, but a little effort here from Gallegos at the front opens up some space about halfway up the Koppenberg here. Still relatively close together. Nobody having a terrible ascent on the way up here. So all things considered, this group looking like they're going to mostly stay together up and over the top here. Colombi going a little further back with Aitken here as Gallegos keeps the pressure on the front. So it might be one finding themselves absent off the back of this group. That would be Gallegos, the Italian, or sorry, Colombi, the Italian, back in 6th, but Gallegos putting it all on the line here.
Well, she is indeed, and she's had a 1st, a 3rd, and a 4th on the Echelon Racing League. Van Hooling, who is chasing and chasing hard, well, she's had a 1st, a 2nd, and 2 thirds. So they are so used to being on the podium, Gallegos and Van Hooling, but Elise Gallegos this time absolutely nailing her colours to the mast and saying, I won this race. Van Hooling, the rider, responding and going with her. So the 2 riders from the USA, neck and neck, as they come towards the top of the Koppenberg. The Swedish rider Lisa Hermansen is the closest to them. She's at 2 seconds. Nicole Meyer 5 seconds further back with Penner and Colombi, and then Allberg and Aitken even further back down the berg.
And now waiting for this elastic to snap back at the back of the group as Hermansen makes it back up to make it 3. Meyer is going to be the next one, and then Colombi on the way up, but they're at 7 and 9 seconds respectively. It'll be interesting to see if this front group keeps the pressure on, realizing that they've got Meyer and Colombi at now 10 seconds back, Tiffany Penner at 11 back into 6th. Or do they go right back to the defensive riding and let those 3 riders catch back up? It's now in the hands of Gallegos, Hermansen, and Van Hooling to decide what they're going to do on the way down here.
Oh, Van Hooling, I think, is taking a huge deep breath of air at the moment and re-inflating her lungs. But Gallegos, Hermansen and Van Hooling, the pace now picking up a little bit after a little bit of respite at the top. They're now onto the descent. Interesting to see they are now dropping the watts and trying to get that recovery in. Nicole Meyer now stands a chance to get back in. So does Columbi and Penner. It's a 4-second gap now from Meyer to the leading three. She's going to want to get back in there because her teammate Van Hooling is in that front group.
Super smart riding here by Meyer. I noticed as soon as those watts in the front group dropped, Meyer went up and she got out of the saddle. She realized that that's the best bang for her buck when that front group is riding, the easiest that they ever will. As soon as it happened, Meyer was immediately on it. And so that's going to bring her back up into striking distance here as she closes that gap or tries to close the gap up to the front group. It's only 2 seconds. I think Meyer's going to get there before they get to the bottom of this one. So that'll make it 4. Columbi is also within striking distance here. She's only a second off the wheel of Meyer, so I think the Italian on the way up. Penner at 3 seconds back. These riders are all about to make their way back up into the front group.
And the second climb, the Eichenberg Hill, not as steep as the first and potentially not going to cause as many problems. But who knows what happens when these riders stand up out of the saddle. And, well, your legs can be talking to you. And if someone's legs are talking louder, it is a dangerous place to be. But Van Hooling, Gallegos and Hermansen, the 3 riders in the lead of this race at the moment, have just had Nicole Meyer join the back of the group. Celine Columbi is only at 2 seconds with Tiffany Penner. I think we're going to go into the Eichenberg Hill, Brad, with all 6 riders back together again.
100%. There's Columbi and Penner about to join this front group as the road kicks uphill. Once again, this will be the bottom of the Eichenberg on the way up here, and we'll see if those two can get there. Now, they do start with a little gap. That is going to be magnified on the way up here for Penner and Columbi. We'll call it 2 seconds right now. But just as they get to 2 seconds, Hermansen back into the red zone here. Meyer and Gallegos responding. Van Hooling there. And now the gap starts going back out. Columbi and Penner back to 4 seconds now as the front group hits it on the last climb of the day. Just 7 kilometers from the line. And Elise Gallegos on another tear to the top of this one.
Oh, she is indeed. She's absolutely nailing it at the moment. So Gallegos in 1. Hermansen this time is a rider in 2. Meyer, who made the catch, is in 3 at the moment. Van Hooling side by side with her. But at the moment, it's Gallegos who's doing the damage here. Hermansen now at 3 seconds. She's riding away from the group.
Clear read here. Elise Gallegos, the strongest climber out of those 6, that's for sure, able to open this gap. And now she's going to have to hold it up and over. That's going to be the hardest thing that Gallegos has to do here. So she's laid the foundation, but now she's got to build the rest of the house with this very small gap that she's opened up. Hermansen is on the way up to join her. So Gallegos may have some company here very soon. Van Hooling a little further back at 4 seconds, might be in a little more trouble, but she's got Nicole Meyer with her. So I think Gallegos and Hermansen maybe try and link up here and go. This is going to be a really, really stunning finish of this elite women's race as they go up and over the final climb of the day. Elise Gallegos put the pressure on, but she couldn't get rid of Lisa Hermansen to the top of the Eichenberg.
Well, I'll tell you something, if Gallegos and Hermansen want 1 and 2 today, they now need to do a 2-up time trial to the finish because 7 seconds to Columbi, Meyer, Van Hooling. That is... Well, it is not a lot. And behind the mind of the flat section at the top of the Eichenberg Hill, we drop down the other side and then we have an absolutely flat run to the finish. And we've seen catches be made because the lead group watching each other in the earlier laps. Hermansen comes to the front of the group with Gallegos and starts to work. They really are going to have to bury themselves between now and that finish line in 6.2 kilometers if they want to stay clear of this chasing group, because teammates on the next team, Meyer and Van Hooling, are both in the group together, and I wouldn't put it past them to sacrifice one rider on the front to line the other one up for the finish line.
So those two leaders are almost going to have to work together. It's almost required to stay away from this group of three behind them because, yeah, if that group of three works together, they could easily chase down that 10-second gap to Gallegos and Hermansen as they go to 6 kilometers to the finish. Here's a look at Celine Colombi on the front of the chase into third place. Those are the two leaders just up ahead. Two leaders that I might note aren't working super well together. They could be riding a little tighter in the front group here, so that's a good sign for Colombi and company to try and get up there.
Well, it really is a bit of cat and mouse, isn't it? Because Gallegos on the back wheel of Hermansen trying to recover. Well, she knows Hermansen's got a good sprint, and you've got to balance that up with keeping the gap to the chase because it's one thing sprinting against Lisa Hermansen for first and second. It's another thing sprinting against Lisa Hermansen for the top 5 places. So there's a real trade-off for Gallegos at the moment. But Maya Van Hooling and Colombi are working well at the moment in terms of trying to bring them back.
And no panic from the front group yet. Gallegos just went up to 5 watts per kilo, but they were doing like 2 or 3. Now they're starting to lift it. They're seeing the writing on the wall for Gallegos and Hermansen up at the front. The power is lifting. The tempo is lifting. Just as Colombi gets within striking distance, they go back up to 5 watts per kilo to take this one back out to 7 seconds.
Well, it's going to be a cracking 5-kilometre finish to this women's elite race here on the Echelon Racing League Championships today on My Whoosh. They're coming off the descent of the final climb, the Eichenberg Hill today, onto the flat run to the finish. There is just under 5 kilometres to go now as Gallegos and Hermansen, the two leaders, now have 6 seconds on the chasing group of 3. It's coming down. What can Gallegos and Hermansen do? They completely need to commit to this, but I think the commitment has come from behind Brad, and we're going to see this group of 5 come together.
Two leaders not nearly as committed as these chasers back behind them as Colombi slowly but surely ticking this time away down to 4 seconds now up to the back of the group of 2, but the kilometers are ticking away as well. They're running out of time before the finish here. This one will be tight by the time they get there as Gallegos and Hermansen survived up and over the second climb of the day, but it was off of the Eichenberg where we saw Colombi, Meyer working together, Van Hooling making it up into this group as well. And I think they're going to make the catch before the finish today.
Well, I think you're right, and the gap now down to 4 seconds. At the most, it was 9. Colombi doing a sterling job on the front here, and Meyer and Van Hooling, we could see on the screen when they were on to their pain caves, the look of commitment on the face and concentration on the face, ensuring that they're doing the work they need to do. And they knew on this flat land, on this flat run to the finish line, they were going to have to work on lap 3. They couldn't back off like they had done on lap 1 and lap 2. It's all about this run to the finish line, and Gallegos tries to go again. She tries to push on the front. Hermansen is on her wheel. 3 seconds it is still holding, but the chase is on behind. Meyer and Van Hooling and Colombi, they are still holding at 3 seconds. It's not going to be enough. There's 3 kilometers to go.
Well, at least Gallegos going all in on her plan that she's been executing all day today, and that is avoid a sprint at the finish. Gallegos has been all over the front of the climbs, attacking early on. She's made it very clear that she doesn't want to take this one down to a sprint, especially with names like Hermansen and Van Hooling in that group. She knew she had to get rid of those very good sprinters, so she launched her attack on the climb, but now they're on their way back up, and that group is about to get bigger. Van Hooling has joined. Colombi is about to join here. Penner probably not going to make it here, but that'll make it 5 coming to the line.
Well, it is indeed the group back together again. Tiffany Penner at 33 seconds at the moment. She's around 300 metres behind the group. They've already gone round the corner ahead. She's not quite there yet as Colombi just closes those final few metres onto the back of the group with 2.5 kilometres to go.
Whether she likes it or not, I think Elise Gallegos is going to have to deal with a sprint out here today. As now another attack going off the front. This will be Nicole Meyer having a go at it now, trying to go from a long way out here. This is 2+ kilometers from the finish, and Nicole Meyer trying to catch this field off guard.
Well, going up and over the top and leaving a teammate in the group behind to see who will chase. Gallegos comes to the front, but instantly comes off the pace. Hermansen, Columbi, well, they are all looking at each other, you know, and Nicole Meyer pushing on some strong pace. They need to be really careful now, Brad, because this is a strong racer. Meyer has had some fabulous wins this season, not too long ago. So the question is, what are they going to do behind? And I can tell you her teammate, Liz Van Hooling, is going to do nothing.
You see Van Hooling up to third spot, just keeping an eye on things back there as Lisa Hermansen is left with the charge to try and chase down Nicole Meyer up the road here. But that group starting to come back. They are putting in a big effort now. Columbi going up to 8 watts per kilo here. She realizes that Meyer is getting out of hand here, and now's the time to do it because Nicole Meyer is a good long-range attacker. So very smart riding by Celine Columbi. She brings Elise Gallegos with her, the other big endurance rider in this group. Of Van Hooling and Hermansen still there. They're just off the wheel of Columbi here, so they have dragged those two sprinters up to the front group as they go inside 1.5K to the line. This one going to come down to a field sprint today.
Oh, it is indeed. And Maya's still pushing on the front, setting a really good tempo here. The pace coming off the chase behind, allowing Maya just to stay at 2 seconds. I think she's going to start ticking up those seconds again. And this group now are really going to have to think about their timing. They need to stop looking at each other, to be honest, because Maya could go over that line clear ahead of them. If they do not get their timing in the sprint correct, they are letting her go because they are worried about sprinting each other.
This will be one of the great strategic wins for Nicole Meyer if this worked out, because it will be largely because she was able to take the gamble when no one else wanted to. So now Meyer forcing Columbi to go a little bit deeper. Gallegos and Hermansen go into the red zone to respond to that one, as Meyer just tapping out the tempo nice and easy up at the front. She hasn't really been doing the variation that this group has been doing behind them. So they've burned through a few sprint matches already as they go inside the last kilometer here, and Nicole Meyer tries to nurse a 2-second lead over Lisa Hermansen.
Oh, they do, and it's 3 seconds at the moment. Gallegos comes to the front and immediately backs off. We go into the cameras with our riders, Gallegos, Van Hooling, Hermansen and Columbi on your screens at the moment with 600 metres to go. Nicole Meyer, she's on a steady, strong pace at the front. She's at 4 seconds from the group behind. So Gallegos, Hermansen, Van Hooling and Columbi are chasing.
Meyer got a nice gap into the last 500 meters here. Nicole Meyer may be surprising this entire field today as the American opens up a gap inside the last kilometers and holding it onto the finishing stretch. She's going to hold on to 4 seconds ahead of Columbi. And I think Nicole Meyer is going to solo to a victory out of this front group. The gamble may pay off for the American here, but here comes Hermansen behind her. It's going to be a close one to the line, but Meyer going to hold on for the win. Lisa Hermansen just couldn't make the catch, and the gamble pays off for Nicole Meyer today.
Well, it does indeed. And the sprint unleashed behind, and Hermansen takes second place from Van Hooling, Gallegos and Columbi. But all credit to Nicole Meyer. She went long. She left her teammate in the group. She takes first place. Her teammate takes third. Lisa Hermansen won the sprint from the group as Tiffany Penner comes around the corner. She's going to finish the race in 6th place today. She's had a really strong ride.
Another good ride for the Canadian rider. Got with the group, lost it, got back in, lost it again. A lot of back and forth battling for Tiffany Penner out there today. I would say the same for Melissa Aitken right behind her. This is another rider who has really had a lot of ups and downs out there today, but now she's going to roll through with our women's B, which should be our winner, Camila Alberg, in the women's B category.
Oh, and what a race Camilla Allberg has had in that women's B category. Melissa Aitken has done yet again today what Melissa Aitken does. She has closed down the gap. She is the queen of the closure on the Echelon Racing League. She's done it again in the championship round as well, as she comes across the line for 7th place today. And Camilla Allberg takes first place in that women's category B race.
We'll see Michelle Gagnon through next. She's going to hold on for this solo gap, holding off Stephanie Briggs behind her. Gagnon, another rider, spent a lot of time by herself today, closing down gaps, hunting groups in front of her. So it's been an exhausting day for the Canadian. Michelle Gagnon, great riding out there, though. She's going to hold on for a solo ride in for 9th today.
Yeah, and some brilliant closure that she achieved as well on that second lap into the third. Just not quite making it onto the back of the group, but a great ride today as she comes under the line.
We'll pick up more riders from our women's B race behind her. Stephanie Briggs and Diane Bowman's going to battle it out here to sort out what I think should be second and third in our women's B category. So this might be a good one on the way in for them.
Yeah, it should be indeed. So it's looking like Stephanie Briggs and Diane Bowman's the two Canadian riders currently lying in second and third place in that women's B race. Oh, steadily does it. These two have been locked together for a lot of the race today as they come towards the final 700 meters.
We'll take this one into the line, sort out our women's B podium here. I want to watch Briggs and Bowman sprint this one out. It's going to be another good finish for these two. Good battle behind them as well with Tuma and Lehman riding together. Melissa Tuma and Julia Lehman going to lock in the women's B race, but Briggs sorting out for second and third right now with her group on the left-hand side of the screen into their last few hundred kilometers. We'll see if anybody going to jump out of that group. Briggs on the front. Bowman's starting from second position here, and now Briggs lifting the tempo. She'll be first to go. Bowman's responds perfectly up to 8 watts per kilo, holding on to the wheel, closing the gap, going to try and make the pass just before the line and around the final turn. Briggs holding on. Bowman's right there, though, as they go into the last 100 meters. This one going to come down to a photo finish at second place for your women's B race as Briggs and Bowman's go to the line together. Now Bowman's gets to the front after sitting on. Briggs let it out, but Diane Bowman's going to come around in the last 50 meters to take second place in the women's B category.
Oh, that was a long sprint and a hard sprint, and Diane Bowman's just taking second place today from Stephanie Briggs in that women's category B.
Ghent did not disappoint in our elite women's race, that's for sure. The two climbs wreaking havoc on this one today, creating an elite front group that is won by Nicole Meyer in a close sprint, less than a second back to Hermansen. Van Hooling ends up in third place. Elise Gallego, super aggressive today. Got to give her some credit into fourth place for her action out in the group. And then Celine Colombi, another aggressive rider. The Italian ending up fifth place. Tiffany Penner having a good day at 45 back in for sixth place. And then we talked a lot about Melissa Aitken today. Had a lot of battles on her plate out there. She ends up seventh place with Allberg, your women's category B winner, riding in eighth place overall. That is a brilliant ride for a women's Cat B rider to hang with the race that we saw in that elite women's race. So really, really good riding from Allberg out there today into eighth. And then Gagnon and Bowman's rounding out our top 10 overall out there today. Nice to see some red jerseys sneaking into the top 10. Those are always impressive performances when those women's category B riders can hang with the elites.
Well, and I tell you, the racing today, Brad, really setting up those USA national champs and the Canadian national champs, and the competition is going to be so strong. 6 races in the Echelon Racing League. In the men's elite, 4 different winners. In the women's elite, 5 different winners across 6 races. The strength and depth, particularly in that women's race field, so strong.
It has been another exciting season of the Echelon Racing League. The action did not let us down again this year. It has been a pleasure being with you every week, and certainly an honor working with you, Emma. What a great pleasure to get on my whoosh here and enjoy some ERL. So it's been a really fun past few weeks, but I know you're going to be looking forward to those national championships as well, as will these riders. And again, if those national championships are anything like the matchups and the battles that we saw in the ERL, it's going to be 2 great weekends of racing. So be sure to tune in to those presented by Echelon Racing Promotions for the U.S. and Canadian National Championship. So, Emma, final thoughts from the ERL.
Oh, the racing has just been superb. And it hasn't mattered what course or what terrain Echelon Racing League has thrown at those riders. They have given us A, great entertainment, and B, brilliant racing.
All right, well, that's going to do it for Emma and I as we wrap up another great year of the Echelon Racing League. If you're not going to join us for the national championships, then we'll say see you next year. But if you are, then we'll see you back for the American and Canadian national championships up next from the Echelon Racing Promotion. So we'll see you down the road. Until then, bye for now.